What if bullying doesn't just happen to those other people? It happens in our schools, in our workplaces, our communities, and the silence around it makes us all complicit in it. How many lives are quietly breaking under the weight of bullying while everyone around them thinks they're fine? Behind every bully is unhealed pain, and behind every victim is untold strength. The real question is, though, do we have the courage to see both? This episode addresses the victim, the bully, the bystander, and the peacekeeper. Welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. I am your host, Justin Gates. Joining me today, as always, my right-hand man. Have I used that one before?
No, but it fits.
There you go. My right-hand man, Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
So, bullying. This is something that people talk about a lot, but it doesn't seem like a lot gets done. I had kids, 5 of them, that went through school. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it at work. I've seen it out on the street. I've seen it a lot online. Bullying, Michael. Bullying. This could be a tough topic to come at, because today we're going to come at it from the perspective of Ashla. And this is what I would teach a luminary about bullying, because, from our perspective, we certainly should never be the bully. We probably wouldn't be the victim, at least not after our training, maybe before, because a lot of us has been through this. And that's the thing about bullying, is like it touches all of us in one way, shape, or the other, whether we're one of those 4 things, right? Whether we're the bystander, the bully, the victim, or the peacekeeper. So, and really that bystander, as we get into this, that bystander can become the peacekeeper, but there's also another one after this, another type, and that's the healer. The healer is very important in this too, but we'll get into that stuff later. Bullying is more than just conflict, isn't it?
Oh, by far. I mean, it's like bullying can be happening around you, and it's so easy to put blinders up to some of the more passive bullying that happens, but it's out there and it's very commonplace.
It is, unfortunately, right? From our perspective, it's a misuse of power. It's domination masquerading as strength. I'm going to pick on you because I'm going to dominate you because I want to feel strong. But it leaves these really deep scars on people. Not everyone, but it does leave deep scars on people. And not only on just like the body, like actual scars, and on the mind, but it damages our dignity and our spirit, doesn't it?
Oh, most definitely. Well, and again, sort of like how there's sort of different types of bullying that happen. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that guy who's calling you names and picking on you or pinning you up against the locker. It can be that person that just confuses your reality, that tries to gaslight you and make you question your own judgment. It makes you feel like you're this big because you don't know any better. There's so many facets that it can take that it's something to be mindful of.
And the axiom of light that I want to talk about for a second, a position of influence is a position of responsibility. Oftentimes the bullies would be good leaders if we could switch their mindset, right? If we could dig deep and kind of heal that pain or heal that trauma that they're operating from. No good person is a bully. And when I say that, I don't mean like good or bad. I mean, bullies have a lot of pain and they have a lot of trauma, I would say. I've never met a bully that didn't have something going on at home, and even as an adult, or things that they had not tended to. So, I know I must be careful using the word good in this, especially in this topic, because I'm not saying that these people are bad. They're doing bad things, right? Their actions are bad. But as we teach and as we believe very strongly, no one's beyond redemption. This axiom of light, a position of influence is a position of responsibility. A person who's bullying abuses influence. They abuse their influence because they may not understand the responsibility they hold or the impact they have on other people. If they weren't bullying them, they could still have the same kind of impact without the physical abuse or the mental abuse. So, and where there should be protection, there is exploitation. You know, bullies obviously exploit people that they see as weaker than them or smaller than them or whatever the case may be. And where there should be respect, there's just humiliations.
Yeah. Well, it's like, how often is a bully operating from a survival response? Whether it's, if I yell and kick and scream and bully, then I get to feel this compensation inside. I get to feel empowered, and I create this space where I know no one's going to mess with me. Or the other side, where I was talking about the passive type of bullying. I mean, how much is it if I manipulate this person enough, I don't have to be held accountable and I don't have to worry about being seen in the true light because I'm afraid to be seen. So I'd say it's almost always coming from a place, like you said, it's from trauma, and it cultivates into these survival responses, which helps us get our needs met, even if it's in very unhealthy and destructive ways.
Yeah. Now, I will say that this crosses all facets of life. You know, it's not just the poor kid that's a bully. It could be the rich kid. It could be the very religious kid. It could be anyone. It could be a boy, girl. It doesn't matter. And that's kind of the thing, you know, oh, they had a bad childhood. Well, even a kid that has grown up with virtually everything can have a quote unquote bad childhood too, because if those needs aren't met, then these things kind of stick to us, as we've talked about over and over again in all these different shows. So what agreement do you think calls to us right now when we're talking about bullying?
It would definitely have to be respect.
Your respect,
I mean,
you got it.
You know, I mean, it's just like, it's that general regard for human life and treating each other the way you want to be treated, to show that love and light. And man, with them bullies, that respect kind of goes to the wayside.
The agreement of respect calls us to recognize, right, the inherent dignity of every single human being. And really, from our viewpoint, all living things. And bullying someone, is it someone or something? I mean, bullying could extend to animals too, right? Pets and whatever. Yeah. It's a direct violation of this sacred idea. It offends the light. It offends the path of Ashla. If you violate basic respect, it is a desecration of another person, of another person's worth, of another person's dignity, their vulnerability,
their very soul.
So how do our ethos tie into this? Well, love affirms life. It never diminishes it, right? And bullying distorts this impulse into harm. So if we show compassion to all people, and at least, I'm not saying you have to respect the worst of the worst, but you have to, from our viewpoint, from our path, our teachings, you must at least respect the spark that is lit inside of them, which we all share, which we all are bound by and connected by. What does truth do? It reveals the reality behind the mask. And it shows us that bullying is not strength. It's not power. It's false strength and false power. And probably a wounded soul projecting outward, wouldn't you say?
Oh, most definitely. I've never met a bully that didn't have their scars that they were operating from.
And of course, integrity. Integrity demands alignment between power and responsibility, true power and true responsibility, influence and accountability. That's where the Luminari operate from, right? We understand our power and our responsibility in that power. And we understand that our influence is felt, even to the smallest whisper, to the most subtle action. We have influence, and we must always be accountable.
Well, I think part of being a Luminari, it's this shift that we have to go through cognitively, where we go from existing and trying to do the best we can in life to doing the best we can in service in life. There's this strange psychological phenomenon called observation bias. I don't think that's the correct terminology, but it's pretty much the group of people watch someone suffering on the side of the street, someone getting bullied. More than likely, no one's going to do anything because everyone's waiting for that one person to respond. And through this training, it's about learning to be the one to take initiative, the one to speak up, the one to act. Call 911 if someone's having a heart attack.
Right.
It's the one to initiate what is the best course to help humanity here, instead of, am I going to come across weird if I try to intercept, if I try to get involved here? No, it's getting out of our heads and into the world.
Yeah. Yes, because we honor the ethos of connection and the sanctity of life. And when we treat others this way, we are severing that sacred bind, that sacred link, right? that sacred thread that binds us together. And it really, in a lot of ways, can create this isolation from people where there should always be belonging. We should always be able to honor that connection because, as I've said many times, and I'll say it over and over again, we are all connected. All things in this universe are connected, whether we want them to be or not. So knowing that, we must do our best to not affect that web negatively, or at least mitigate the harm that we do. We can't always not harm because sometimes we have to make a choice between a hard thing and a hard thing, right? Well, we should try to make the choice that does the least amount of harm to the person in front of us or across those ripples across the pond, right? And of course, as we say, and we will keep saying, the sanctity of life or respect for life, if that feels better for you to say. And of course, that's easy. That's an easy one. No life is expendable. Not one, which is a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to practice, that not one life on this earth is expendable because all life is sacred. Every person is sacred. Every animal, everything is sacred. And every act of misuse of respect and bullying is an affront to that truth. So as we open up today's conversation, I invite all of you, to see bullying not just as this kind of social problem that we always say is out there, but more of a wound to our entire beings, our mind, our body, our spirits, our emotional, our heart, right? That's right here, right now, right in front of each and every one of us. And this conversation, I hope it becomes a call for us as victims, as bystanders, and even as bullies, to reclaim that dignity, to live responsibly and to embody respect. Because really, at the heart of this, it's a battle for dignity, right? And it begins with each and every one of us.
Beautifully said.
So what is bullying?
Bullying is the unnecessary criticism or attack on one's own soul. It takes so many different forms, but it is a malicious thing that is done for gain or for some aim.
Yeah. It's an attack on a person's sovereignty, their very sovereignty, right? And yes, I would encourage everyone, as we talked about in our show that just hit today on communication, that, the old sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, right? Yes, that is important, because once we allow all words to become weapons, then the sky's the limit. Then we could be harmed by anything. And we have to learn to kind of, I won't say toughen up, but we need to learn to use discernment and decide what words are going to actually cause us harm and which ones aren't. But, verbal and physical, social bullying is a big one. People die from that. Most people don't die from physical bullying. They get beat up and they get bruises and cuts. But people really die from social bullying. And of course on the internet now, right? Across the millions of platforms that are out there. So, and have you ever heard anybody say, man, kids will be kids, right?
Yeah, right?
No, not if we teach them better, they won't be. My kids never bullied anybody, because if they did, then they're going to have to learn a lesson. And no, I didn't bully them. I taught them the lesson that we don't treat people that way, no matter what they did. And if it's out of our control, if it's out of our power to do something about it, then we must seek higher guidance. We must seek higher power, whether that's a teacher or a boss and if those people are the source of the bullying, then we must go above them, right? But that's hard to do. I understand that's easy to say. I was an investigator in the civilian sector for a long time, and I dealt with a lot of these. I dealt with a lot of workplace violence. I dealt with a lot of harassment, whether it be sexual or otherwise. I've investigated these things, and it's a lot easier said than done. But if we start here, if we start one little step for each of us to be better about it, then I think it's worth talking about. So bullying isn't just kids being kids, or even like an occasional harsh word, because kids are still growing and they're still learning how to put themselves in the world and in their place in the world. But this happens on every level, at every age group, at every different kinds of place. So it's not just kids being kids. And sometimes maybe it feels that way because, the workplace bully acts like a kid, you know,
Yeah, right?
but it's not kids being kids, or, it's repeated and intentional harm, whether that's verbal or physical or over the internet, on social media, sending pictures, whatever the case may be. And as you said, it's designed to control or diminish or isolate another person, right?
And I think one important thing to keep in mind is as we describe the ways to view this in others and to be mindful of it, really take time to be mindful in your own life to make sure you don't become a bully. I know, I think back to that one really unhealthy relationship I had for 7 years, and I was never reactive in those situations. I was bullied in that relationship, but I found myself passively becoming the same way,
Mm,
where I would make jabs.
yeah.
And it takes awareness to be like, hang on, was what I just said constructive or destructive? Same with kids. You have that one irritable day and you lash it out at your kids. Hey, you need to quiet your mouth. I don't want to hear you right now. Is that being constructive or is that being destructive? So bullying isn't just isolated to these few individuals who have no regard for other people.
Right.
Bullying can exist in all of us.
Yeah, and all of us have probably been guilty of it at one time or the other. This is what separates us from our counterparts and those who follow a darker path. They seek power for the sake of seeking power to control and influence, right?
Yeah.
But we don't seek power for power's sake. But we understand that we still acquire power, whether we're seeking it or not. But we choose to use it to protect and uplift, whereas they may use it to dominate and break people down or bring them down to their knees. So let's talk about.
Well, I think when you look at our counterparts, we have that regard for human life. If we were to meet a stranger on the street, homeless, whatever, we would not give them any less recognition than we give ourselves. We are all equals. We are all kindred spirits at the same light, compared to I am superior to all things outside of myself.
We all make mistakes. Some of us, we just make different mistakes. And those different kinds of mistakes have different kind of consequences. But it doesn't mean that we're not cut from the same cloth, that we don't carry the same light within us. And I understand that it's easy for me to say. And some of you may not believe that I actually do this out in my day-to-day life away from here. But I can tell you, you can ask anyone that knows me, that walks with me every single day, literally walks next to me, shares space with me, that there is nothing about what I'm saying that's different from what I do. And it was a long, hard road to that. I understand. But if we can just at least start to flirt with the idea that all life is sacred, a lot of this starts to melt away. Right? So go ahead.
Just it helps us when we get into those moments where we feel that need to do something to try to make our point. It helps us step back and really realize that this is just another me I'm talking to. How would I feel if I reacted the way I'm feeling I need to react if someone did that to me?
Right.
And it's that whole, as we talk about almost every episode, it's that pause before the response.
I'm going to leave this in, but I forgot to turn on my light today, so you guys are going to see a big difference here in just about a second. So, yes, the first 15 minutes of the show was kind of yellow in here, and now it's bright.
He's been touched by God.
I've been touched. Oh, gosh. All right, so the different forms of bullying. Let's talk about a few of the more common ones. Physical violence, right? This is like intimidation through force, but again, this doesn't just leave bruises on the body, but it scars us right down to our spirit, yeah? Verbal attacks, which is probably the most common, I would say. I don't see a lot of people getting actually beat up. Even in school, I didn't see that very much. But you hear a lot of attacks verbally in all places. I've seen it in churches. I've seen it in grocery stores. I've seen it at work. I've seen it in school, of course. And I've seen it in the house, in the home.
Well, and I think you're correct on that. Like domestic violence, man, it's like, yeah, that's horrible. It is something like I do not condone whatsoever.
God, I would hope not.
But yeah, okay, touche.
I think that goes without saying, Michael.
Okay, yes. But it's not as common as people make it out to be, I think. You might know better than me being in law enforcement and everything else, but you're right. I think verbal bullying is the primary form of bullying.
Yeah, it is. Because people, and I said a little while ago that words aren't always weapons, but these are intentional use of words as weapons, right? Things like insults or mocking somebody. Or when I was a kid, the big thing was to hex people, because some movie came out and everybody was trying to hex everybody, but those were still threats, because they meant them. They really was hoping that their hexes would hurt somebody. And really, this is the intentional use of words as weapons. Now, this goes back to the book, The Four Agreements, right? We must be impeccable with our words. And also, because that book also honors the connection, you're really hurting yourself. It's really, really important to understand that. Socially, something like excluding people socially, kind of, banishing them from the social circles. It's really kind of a silent way to do it, but it's really cruel too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing once, it's like when you look at bullying in schools, it's like men or boys were much more common bullies where they were physically aggressive or intimidating, and for women, that is how they would bully, would be spreading gossip and trying
Mm-hmm.
to defame others and trying to get social stature that way, and that's how
Right.
girls would, yeah.
There's like a ton of popular movies about that. Literally, the whole movie's about that, right?
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls is one that comes. My kids watch that movie, and I'm thinking, man, this is horrible. Is this how it was even when I was in school? Maybe. But, ignoring people or isolating people away from belonging to something or groups. There was always the cliques going to school, but these cliques exist at work, and these cliques exist at churches, and these cliques exist everywhere, everywhere, because that's just kind of, these kind of people tend to congregate, and then these people that are isolated and stuff, eventually they start to kind of find each other. And this goes back to the episode we did, Building Your Inner Circle, which you guys should go check out if you haven't listened to that, because that's one way to combat this part of it, is choosing a good circle of people. And then, of course, there's cyberbullying, which it's been my experience watching the world evolve. This one's really dangerous. It's like a modern battlefield, right?
Oh, it's
And
crazy.
people die from this.
Well, I think one of the most scariest parts about cyberbullying and why it is so bad is when you can go under an alias, when you don't even have to have your name out there, it caters to some of the worst parts in our human nature. Because then there's no consequences for your actions.
Put a mask on. I can change my voice. I can do whatever I want. My fingers are the masters of the universe right there, right? I can just type whatever I want and think that I can't. And in more recent years, like, I don't know, the last 5 or 6, doxing has really kind of sucker punched that. And instead of making people more mindful, doxing has become another form of bullying too. And this one actually, that actually hurts people. And I don't give a shit what side of the political spectrums, the religious spectrums, the social spectrums you're on. I don't care. I don't care. Because this is a return to basic decency and basic respect. And you should really, really be careful what you do, because you create ripples. And if you're doing something, and I don't care about this whataboutism crap either. I don't care if they did it. Do better. Be better. Take the high road if you have to, because you're just creating more of the same thing. It's just in a different way. So cyberbullying is a really, really tough one. And I wish that I could just snap my fingers and make cyberbullying go away, because people die from this. Children die from this, right?
No, it's sad. Like, if we don't learn to get involved and stand up for things, the more things will spread out. You see things going on in the world today and people being more and more at odds. That is the grounds in which bullies will grow. They will flourish. They will prosper. And so we need to cultivate a voice that can stand firm and stand up to people who are busy trying to release something or get some gain at the expense of someone else.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the agreement of responsibility is my primary focus of this segment of the show. Because responsibility tells us and teaches us, if we listen, that every single person is accountable for the way that they act, and for the way they use their words, and for how they show up. You're responsible for that. Every single one of us is responsible for that. And if you abuse that power, you betray trust, and you betray responsibility, and you betray respect. Love calls us to affirm life, and these actions are a corruption of love, because it turns love into harm, and you're dishonoring truth. Well, you're not dishonoring truth, but truth drags it out into light and shows it what it is. And with that responsibility comes integrity, because you must match inside and out. If you say that you're responsible, and if you say that you respect all life, and if you say that you are loving, then your actions will match that, not the opposite. I want to make clear that this is not a trivial matter. It's not just a few incidents of cruelty here and there. It's a pattern that we see everywhere if we look for it. How do we spot it? Glad you asked. We're going to talk about that in a second. But this is a corrosion of our souls. It corrodes the person who's receiving it. It corrodes the one who inflicts it, and corrupts the one. It corrodes the one who receives it, and it's a corruption of the one who inflicts it. But it's also a corrosion of the ones who watch and do nothing, who sit and do nothing.
Well, I think that's such an important point.
Go ahead.
Just the ripples it leaves. I mean,
Yes.
Corrosion is the perfect word, because it will eat at everyone involved or not involved. Like you said, bystanders. Because those who don't involved feel that guilt, that shame. The person getting bullied then carries that with them, and they might turn into a bully themselves. And even the bully, they know what they've done. I remember it was a couple years back, the kid who bullied me the most in high school, I ran into him at a Mexican restaurant, and he was carrying that around for a long time, and finally he's like, man, I never forgot how I treated you, and I am so sorry for that. Like, my dad bullied me, and I ended up bullying you, and it was like, hey, no hard feelings. It was all things happen as they need to, but glad you're doing better.
Most of us don't get that, right? But that's proof that bullies won't necessarily always be a bully. They oftentimes are. But to understand what this is, we must call it by name. We must drag it out into the light, as we say, and shine truth upon it, right? So I'll give you a story that I heard the other day. My mom works at a local restaurant here, and there was about 6 people at a table, 6 or 7 people at a table. And they were older. They were probably in their 50s, late 40s to early mid 50s. Okay. But there was one person there that was much older, an elderly woman, much older than that, probably in her 70s or older. And the one person that was sitting next to her was just being so mean to her and calling her names and stuff. And at one point during the meal, I mean, she was talking all kinds of crap to her, and everybody was just kind of standing there. Everybody was just kind of, and even the people at the table, clearly they were related in some way, but they were just sitting here letting this happen, right? And then it escalated to where the elderly woman, asked for some salt to put on her food. And this woman, who I'm assuming is her caretaker of some kind, I don't know what the relation is. You could assume her daughter or something, right? But I don't know that. So, but obviously a person in a position of trust to take care of her. Now, do you think that she just said, oh, no problem, and handed her the salt?
Oh, I'm sure she made a big deal about it.
She smacked her in front of everyone. She slapped her.
Oh my God.
She slapped her. She slapped her on the hand. And she said, if you're going to act like a kid, I'm going to treat you like one.
Oh my God.
Nobody, not one soul in that freaking place stood up and confronted that lady. My mom was in shock. I think most of them were, probably. Now,
Well, I believe it.
I don't say that to disparage anybody that was there, because no one teaches you how to deal with bullies unless they do teach you, right?
Here we are.
Here we are. But we're talking about the effects of this, how it corrodes people. Now, you can see the look on the people's faces that this isn't the first time. This happened before. And probably a lot of crap talking all the time. And I get it. Caretakers go through a lot. They go through a lot, especially depending on what the problem is. Now, I don't know if this woman has dementia and I'm not even going to speculate, because I'm not going to give this woman the benefit of the doubt, because she decided to smack this woman in front of everyone. Now she was smacked this person in front of everyone in public. Just try to imagine what happens behind closed doors.
Right.
So nobody, and even today, my mom was still talking about it. She was still, as a bystander, as a witness, it was eating at her. So I just wanted to share that because, it does affect everyone around. So, and everybody at that table, this is probably just one more notch where they're like eating at them some more and more. And someday, someone at that table in their life is going to snap. It's going to just, right? Probably snap and go after the woman, the caretaker. Now, Heather can vouch for me, and my kids can too. There have been many times where I've been sitting in public and somebody start hollering and bad mouthing and verbally assaulting people, sometimes physically. And no, I wasn't at work. No, I wasn't on duty. But, it doesn't take me more than about 6.5 seconds to hear what's going on or see what's going on and stand up and say, what's happening here? What's going on here? But we'll get into that later because as we learned today, we need to learn how to spot these types of things, especially when they're more subtle. But we also need to learn how to deal with them when we see them, right? Because that's the goal today. Because again, to stop it, we got to start calling it out, all of us, wherever it happens. But we got to do so wisely. Not all of us are meant to, throw dudes in headlocks and powerbomb them. So let's talk about spotting some of the signs. Michael, why does awareness in this matter?
Because awareness adds context. It adds context and allows us to spot, again, like we talked about earlier, how some people can even be passive in their bullying. It can go missed so easy, even by you if you're being bullied. I mean, I tell you what, I've dealt with a fair bit of that type of bullying, and I didn't even realize it till long after that. That was manipulation and totally meant to do harm to me. That was not, I was questioning my reality, but that was what they were trying to get me to do.
Right.
So awareness is important because it helps us be alert to what we're looking for, as well as what the best approach could be given the situation.
Yeah. This kind of stuff often happens. It hides in plain sight. A lot of it. And many victims carry these really invisible wounds around while really working hard to try and look fine on the outside, right? But the truth is, whether it's in children or teens or adults or old people, which I guess are adults, there are always signs if we know what to look for. So, but again, they require discernment first and then courage to want to know what's happening, right? So our axiom of light: confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act, seek guidance, and proceed cautiously. This is especially true when we're spotting these signs, when we start to become aware of these things that are happening around us. So, and we don't always know what's happening. It gets kind of tricky out there in the world, doesn't it? Sometimes it's hard to determine whether someone is just disciplining their children or it's worse than that. Sometimes it's hard to see because oftentimes they won't do that out in public. But the story I just shared with you, clearly there's some stuff happening behind the scenes too, probably worse. If they're just openly smacking people now, there's probably something. That's an easy one to spot. But, somebody grabbing a child by the arm and kind of yanking them and kind of giving them a mean look or whatever, it's hard to discern that sometimes.
Right. Was there some provocation that was going on? Was there some discipline that was being needed there? Was this something that's been going on throughout the day or a frequent issue they've been running into? Or is this just how they respond whenever their kid acts out of alignment?
Are they just tired over it? My stepdaughter, when she was little, I took my oldest and her to the movies with me because her sisters were too young. They were little. They were too young to go to the movies. But, she was like 5 and she said she was a big enough girl to go. And I gave her the benefit of the doubt because, I loved hanging out with my daughters. We went to go see the Hulk, the one with Edward Norton. Yeah, I remember that movie. Yeah, I made it through about 38 minutes of that movie before she started flipping out. And, I purposely didn't go to opening day or whatever, so it would be less busy. But there were still, 30 or 40 people in the theater. She flipped out. Now, I just snatched her up and put her over my shoulder and carried her out to the car. We were going to go home. I wasn't going to ruin this for everyone else because my daughter was having a moment. Now, as I was carrying her out of that movie theater, do you think she just sat there and quietly...
Oh, no, I can just picture it.
You know Michelle now. She's big
Yep.
now. But she was screaming, help me, help me. And I'm just, I mean, I probably was, I don't have anything red near me, but, you know, probably as red as this cup. I was hot, bro. But all I could do is just hold her on my shoulder and just carry her out, because what else can I do? Right?
Yep.
Now people were eyeballing me. Like, is this guy like kidnapping this kid or what's happening? Now, I'm sure I had the look on my face like, don't bother approaching me because I'll be carrying you over my other shoulder, right? So it's hard to tell sometimes. It's really hard to spot the signs, especially, I mean, even with somebody who's had all this training and all this experience dealing with conflict, dealing with fights and all these different things, right? It's even hard for me to know the signs. But we may not know what's happening, but if we don't stop and pause and try to discern and look at whatever evidence is in front of us, that silence and that avoidance may allow real harm to continue or to get worse, right? So when it's people that we know and we start to see these little changes, we really should be asking questions. Or if we can't ask questions, we need to ask to get help. We need to seek help, people that can ask those questions, because we should always be choosing compassion over hesitation. So what are some things that we can see in everyday life for children and teens, we'll say? What kinds of things can we look for?
You know, often you can see sort of this withdrawing energy they have when they're dealing with that. They know better. They'll stay quiet. They'll sort of get all small. You know, there's a fear of school or social settings where they just don't feel comfortable going to different things because they don't know how to manage it. Like, I think with kids, they embody so much of the house, it might be easier to spot in adults. Mind you, this is also still use discernment, because you never know what's actually going on.
They could be going through puberty or something where it's really messing them up.
Yep. It's like you're telling your story. I went through something very similar, only mine was my sister. My mom had to use the bathroom in the store, so she's like, watch your sister. So I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And I'm all holding her hand, or I'm holding her in my arms. And she bites me, tears into me, and I set her down, and I'm like, I'm mad. And she just looks up to me, and she's like, he's kidnapping me. Oh, dude.
Man.
And I just froze, because I'm like,
How
I
old
don't
were
even know
you?
what to do. I was like 12.
So you're much bigger than she is at that point.
Yeah, I was big enough that I was like, I know you don't want a kid saying that. I'm like, oh man. But it's like my sister was my bully growing up.
Right.
So
what about things like changes in eating and sleeping habits and patterns?
Yeah. You'll notice a lack of appetite. They're so in their heads. When people get into that survival mode, food no longer becomes a key. It becomes something pleasurable. It becomes something that you do when your adrenaline's going. Are you hungry? No. Same with sleep. Are you sleeping with one eye open? Like, these patterns do have tells to them.
Yeah. One of my kids, she's born like her father, really kind of thick, right? And she's just never going to be a skinny girl, ever, because that's just not how she's built, and it's fine. Obviously, I'm okay with it, right? But she got bullied a lot about that. And, you know, I noticed really sharp changes in her eating habits. And, you know, I just pulled her aside and said, what's going on? Why are you not eating the way you normally do? And it took some digging, and it took some prodding, and it took some, you know, but she finally said, well, I don't want to be fat anymore. And I'm like, well, number one, you're not fat. You know, she isn't. She wasn't, and she isn't. She just built thick like me. It's just, this is our lot in life, right? We had to play the cards we're dealt. And so that was a really easy thing for me to see in her, because, you know, it was a sharp turn. It was like, you know, middle school. And that's where a lot of bullying happens in schools, middle school.
Middle school was the worst for me. Oh my God.
Yeah,
that is where I got it the worst.
Obvious things like unexplained bruises or cuts, and then they try to explain it away, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, that doesn't really, you know, 1 + 1 is 2, but what you're saying is 3 + 2 is 7. It doesn't make sense here. And you're right. This is where discernment is important. But if we don't use discernment and don't try to, at least inside our heads, work this out, you know, it's easy to dismiss these things as just phases. It's just a phase they're going through. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is, especially during puberty, because there's a lot of moodiness. There's a lot of things going on that they just can't control. It's just what's happening. But to your point, discernment asks us, and it pushes us to pay closer attention, to try and look beyond the surface. And there's lots of ways to do that without really going too far. So you were saying just a minute ago that it's much easier to see in adults. What kinds of things can we spot with adults that may or may not be something happening to them, like bullying?
I think one of the biggest signs for me that I've seen in the few times where I find out something was going on is this reservation they have about them. They sort of have this lost look in their eyes, or this soulless look. And it's not that they're soulless, just empty, like they had gone through something significantly traumatic.
All right.
And sometimes you'll see sort of the opposite, where you'll see this anxiousness where they're on edge all the time. You go to pat them on the back, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa! It's like, hey, I was just saying hi. You're safe. We're good. We're good.
Right. Yeah. Especially like for these kind of work social things, right? They tend to not show up. But that's not a good sign either, because some of us are just like, dude, I hang out with these people 5 days a week. The 2 days I get, I am not hanging out with them. So again, I would say it's just as hard to see this kind of thing because, in the workplace, and it's been my experience that most of the times it's not some kind of physical thing. It's not an easy thing to see. But, things like avoiding these gatherings, especially when they used to go to them and they were happy to go to them. And a lot of times, I'll notice that it's when a new leadership comes in, or not even so much a new coworker, but like a new manager, a new supervisor tends to do that. But it's hard to tell with adults, especially in the workplace, because sometimes they get burnt out. Sometimes they're anxious because they've got too much work to do, or so. But adults face bullying. They do. And it's most often seen in the workplace. And this could be any workplace. I've seen it a lot in the military, I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot in law enforcement, at all different levels of law enforcement. I've seen it. It happens. I told you a story off the air that I'm not going to share on the air because I don't want to get fired. But
to the point.
But that was something that happened a lot. So adults face bullying too. But isn't it weird how we tend to minimize adult bullying as if only it was for kids? Like, again, kids would just be kids, or whatever they say. Right?
Well, I think it's fascinating because you're right. We do minimalize adult bullying. And the reason is because I think there's this conscious of they're an adult, they can figure their stuff out. I don't have the details. Sort of the same concept. I'm just going to stay out of this.
Or I don't want to get fired or whatever either. Especially.
But the irony is it's the easiest one to address.
Yeah.
Because
I think so.
If you have someone who's going through something, you notice these signs, whether they're being bullied or not, you just go up to them and you can be like, hey, I notice you're a little off lately, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just want you to know I'm here if you need to talk. You can trust that I'm someone you can confide in, and no judgment, no nothing, just know I'm here. So, and leave that space open. It's as simple as that. And then if they're not getting bullied, they're going to be like, honestly, my mom's sick at the hospital and I'm not all there.
Pulling my hair out. It's too much to do. They won't hire anybody to help me. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about online spaces? I think, to me, this almost seems like if you know a person well enough and they haven't gone into isolation, which this often drives people into, where they're just staring into the screen all day. What kinds of things can we look for cyberbullying?
I think one key thing to look for is that secrecy, that sort of weird air people get around technology.
Like,
yeah, not wanting anyone to see.
Coming in to do this, or they do this, right? That could be for another reason. You don't want to get in trouble by your partner, but yeah.
Right. Well, and I think there is a different type of emotion. Yeah, anxiety is involved, but one type of anxiety is more of a survival for life. The other is more of an air of, how would you even describe? An air of defensiveness. The emotions are completely different.
Yeah.
As much as they might at surface level seem the same.
Right. Yeah, and the problem with cyberbullying, it spills over into the world. And like you never get away from it, especially if you're a kid. You know how many kids have killed themselves because they get they get just bombarded online and people are bullying them, and then when they put their screens down, and then they have to walk into a world where people are actually doing it in real life too. So
What's really bad is you hear about people making multiple accounts to bully one kid, and it's one person just attacking them as 10 different people. And like, man, how is that not going to mess a kid up?
I was working on something the other day, and I walked out into the living room, and Heather and Bella were watching a like a true crime thing, and it was about this mom who was cyberbullying her own daughter. I mean, and it got out of hand, dude. She had like 7 different phones, and she was doing all this stuff, and she was calling her some really horrible things, like stuff I cannot even, I can say some of the cuss words. I will not repeat what this woman was telling her own daughter, and pretending to be these anonymous people. And at first she was like, it's for her own good because this person did this and this person did that. I was just trying to toughen her up. She went to prison for that. I mean, it got bad. So, her own mom. I mean, that blew my mind. And I usually walk past those true crime things because I don't want to see it on TV anymore. Lived some of it in real life, but this one I like kind of stopped in my tracks. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of a story right there.
I'm like, wait a minute. Did they just say that the mom, because I walked in there when the sheriff was interviewing the mom, or he was there to collect the phones as evidence because they had figured out, they had traced it all back to her, and he was like busting her. He was confronting her about it. And that's when I walked in. I was like, did he just, what? And now I'm hooked. Now I'm watching the rest of this thing because I want to see how this plays out. But it messed her kid up bad. So anyways, we could talk about cyberbullying forever and ever and ever, hours and hours. I think we all have a pretty good understanding of what it is. But the thing I want to kind of put out there is that the kind of bullying that happens online spills over into the things we've already talked about. It causes some of these things, right? So
one thing I got to add just before we dive too far beyond it is just a few other things to be mindful of with your kids, with this being such a rampant thing, is be mindful of your kids sort of going in and out of accounts, deleting them, kind of falling off the map in social media. Or if they're all of a sudden they're shifting from they check their social media at dinner or a couple times a night to constantly being on their phone. It never hurts to be involved in sort of seeing what's going on because cyberbullying is no joke, and it's one of the most malicious types of bullying out there because, again, people online, it enables such bad behavior because they can be anonymous about it. So they can be as cruel and menacing as they want to be. And I mean, just like you said with the mother, I mean, it's something to be mindful of, especially even, I would say, over these other ones that we say they're a little ambiguous, but at least we got an idea. Cyberbullying, that's the stuff that could really get to people's souls, especially kids, where technology is their source of well-being and their value.
And connection.
Yeah.
And connection, right? Connection is supposed to be this thing. It's one of our ethos. It's supposed to be this thing that we understand that we're never alone, and that we shouldn't have to face our pain alone. We shouldn't have to celebrate our victories alone and all this stuff. But it gets turned on you. It gets used as a source of suffering through the connection. Not all social media is bad. Not all connection through the internet's bad, but it can get bad if we're not wise, if we're not aware, if we're not responsible. Someone's gonna disagree with me about this, but I always had a disagreement with my kids. If I want to spot check your socials, I'm going to. Now, I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. Did my kids probably make accounts I didn't know about? Probably, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't matter now. But whenever I wanted to see their phone, they handed it over without hesitation because that's just how we made this agreement together. And I didn't always check it. I rarely checked it, but when I asked for it, it was given, and I don't really want to hear this crap of, oh, well, you're invading their privacy and blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? I didn't want to bury my kids because somebody was saying shit to them on the internet. I didn't want some predator grooming my kids over the internet because that actually happened. Well, it didn't happen because I was so aware of it, but because I was on top of things. But someone tried to groom one of my kids one time over the internet. Okay. And So I don't want to hear any of that blah blah blah. You're just, they call them helicopter parent or whatever. Yeah, whatever. My kid didn't come up missing because of it.
Well, it's one of those things like you got to know how to create those boundaries with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean boundaries of your kids get to do what they want. But you
Right.
got to be assertive and set a plan. Like you said, you had an agreement with the kids.
An
I know
agreement.
I've spent a lot of times considering when I have kids, it's like I don't even want them to have technology. But also, that's going to really make them struggle fitting in schools.
It will.
So it's like I want to push it as far as I can with them not having screens. But when the time comes, there will be those agreements. Like you're going to let me look at your stuff. I'm going to have you through my Apple where I can follow your stuff, follow you, and make sure you're not doing anything you shouldn't be. And, I'll give you your freedom.
Right. We have to trust but verify sometimes.
Yes.
Now, again, did my kids do things that I don't know about? Probably. All kids do. But at least if I build that relationship with them, that, look, when I want to see it, you're going to give it to me. Do we agree? Do we have this understanding? Do we have this agreement? We build that trust by, I'm not going to just arbitrarily do it as a form of punishment or do it as a form of control over you. It's just me trying to look out for you. And once we have that understanding, then, it is what it is. So let's briefly go over the mental and spiritual toll that bullying takes on us. And again, it's not just about bruises or harsh words. It's about the erosion of a person's spirit, of their self-worth, their confidence, their purpose and their place in this life. It really muddles that up, right? Because the people carry anxiety with them because of it, depression because of it, and yes, even suicidal thoughts. And it chips away at their self-worth. Piece by little piece, just chipping away. And at some point, a person could believe this lie that they are less than or unworthy or invisible.
Well, and I think the wounds of bullying, especially in adolescence, I mean, throughout life, it is one of those things that if it hits, trauma is never about what happens to us. It is about how we internalize it. And bullying has this bad habit of really leaving scars on the soul. Something we carry with us that we're constantly questioning our self-worth, our own capabilities. I mean, even just being pinned up against the locker makes you wonder, can I stand up for myself? Can I do self-defense? And it can be so detrimental because this is the kind of stuff, people don't just brush it off most of the time. Most of the time, they carry it with them until they're finally ready to face it, or it follows them to the grave.
Or they just snap, right?
Yeah.
See that a lot these days. And sometimes it is catastrophic. People lose their lives. And one life is too many. One life is always too many. The axiom of light: approach understanding with light and darkness will never gain purchase. What this axiom teaches us that these kinds of behaviors, bullying, thrives in this darkness. And sometimes it thrives in secrecy and in silence and in shame. These aren't of the light. These don't honor the sacred ethos. This doesn't honor truth, doesn't honor integrity, doesn't honor love or connection, right? So, but to approach the victim, well, I'll say to approach all involved, to try and approach them with understanding and compassion. It starts to weaken that hold the darkness has on people. To approach them with understanding is to remind them of their light, of their worth, of their connection, of our love for them. And again, I'm going to say something that's really easy to say and hard to do, but to approach the bully with understanding is to show them love as well by exposing the things that they're doing to people. And maybe even if we get enough time with them, or if we plant the seeds deep enough, they'll start to realize the wounds that are fueling them.
I heard this term, and as much as I want to start using this a lot in our episodes because it ties into so much of what we talk about, but it's approach things with curiosity. If you try to make standard judgments, there's no good or evil. There is just what happens in life. And again, most bullies carry trauma from their own experiences that push them into this direction. Now, it does not mean don't let there be consequences, don't let there be resolution. But it does mean if you can come from a place of empathy, of curiosity, you might be able to sift out what's really going on and, in turn, help them go into repair with the victim. That's a very rare case, but that's some profound healing.
Axiom of light: heal yourself by healing others. We all do that. I've never met a healer that wasn't damaged and healed. Still carry these scars, but now they have insight that is really important to help others. This is how we heal. And maybe we don't heal completely, Mike. That's a very difficult thing to understand or say or contemplate. Do we ever truly heal completely? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Because every little bit of healing that we do inside helps us heal others just that little bit too. So how do we serve both the bully and the victim? Because this is really the heart of the challenge here. This is Justin saying things that's easy to say, but damn it, I can't do it. I can't give a bully mercy. I can't, the only justice here is frontier justice for a bully.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot. And I've probably said that before, especially when it was with my kids. It's really hard to not want to just give them a little hug. It's really hard, or at least think about it. At least think about it. Whenever I went down to the principal's office because my kid was being bullied, and we had told them and told them and told them, and then now something happened, and I had to go down there. God forbid I'm there, but Heather get there. I'm not the one you got to worry about, and I'm the one that's almost 6 foot tall and 250 pounds. But you got to worry about her because it's really difficult, especially when it's our own kin, it's our own people, it's our own kids. But this is the heart of the challenge. And here's the challenge, Michael. The victim needs protection. The victim needs validation. And of course, they need healing, right? The bully needs accountability. They need correction. But they also need protection, and they also need validation, and they also need healing. And they certainly need a chance to face whatever the source of this is. And if we only just punish the bully, that might just make it worse. That might just open the wound and open it worse, and or make them more resolute in, this is where I hurt and nobody cares, so I'm just going to keep pouring it, right? But if we only protect the victim, then we risk ignoring the roots of the problem. So here's my challenge to you. True transformation requires us to see both. And this is the luminary way. To see both. To offer light, truth. To see what's happening, to see this naked, unadulterated truth. We don't like it, but here it is, right? It requires us to see both these things, both the suffering of the victim and the brokenness of the bully. And now I'm going to say, we're not always the right person for that. I get it. Because all life is sacred. Both need their dignity restored. So that's the challenge. That's the hard part.
Not going to say it better myself. It was exactly what I was thinking. It's right in our ethos. It's like that is how you serve both the bully and the victim, is to see the humanity in both.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to see it in the victim because you're really feeling for him, but
Right.
The bully, that's where you're really like, all right, let's talk this out. Let's figure what's going on here.
Because
How
really,
can we find resolution?
We talked about this being like a battlefield, like a battleground. And bullying, of course, isn't just a battle of words or fist. It's a battle for dignity at the end of the day on both sides. Both sides are struggling to find their dignity. One person has lost or forgotten their dignity and is now taking someone else's. But again, this wages war on the soul, and it chips away and it whispers these little lies that destroy that self-worth. But the antidote is always the same. Approach these things with light. And to the victim, we really have to do a good job of reminding them of their worth, that greatness, that inherent greatness that's within all, right? And to the bully, to confront their misuse of power. But try to call them back to responsibility and to redemption and to healing, because both are going to need the same things. It's just easier for us to give to one and not the other because we have this tendency of wanting to see not justice, but vengeance. That's why mercy and truth are important here. So we've talked about the bully and the victim a lot. Let's talk about the bystander real quick, because they're a really important part in this. Wouldn't you say?
The ones who can make the difference. Yeah, the victim can stand up for himself. Yes, the bully can realize their action isn't just. But 9 out of 10, that's not what happens on those sides.
Yeah, that's not what.
No, the bystander is the one who can make a difference, who can step in. I mean, if you need any other motivation to intervene and at least show up for the victim after something has happened. When an event happens, I forget the time frame, I think it's like 45 minutes. In that 45 minutes, this event will slowly calcify into their soul. It'll become a part of their essence as far as their understanding of the world and how they are in this world. But if you can intervene within that 45-minute period, you have the ability to help rewrite that narrative before they write a narrative that is disempowering and self-harming. So if you need any other motivation to be there for a victim when something happens, let that be it. You can make a difference. I don't care who you are or what the situation is.
You know, Allie, who we had on a while back, we did the codes, the show on codes and things like that. She teaches a really good class about how to be a good witness, and she would be great. Hopefully, Allie, if you're listening to the show, put some of that in the comments of this post once it goes up, because, and we may bring her back on for that, because it's a really good class, and it really empowers the bystander and the witness, because sometimes the best thing we could do is just be really good witnesses, especially when you're dealing with serious crimes and things like that. But yeah, so when bystanders look away or convince themselves, it's none of my business. We hear that a lot. I know how to mind my business. We have some evidence from a few weeks ago where that was someone lost their life because everybody was just minding their own business. Now, maybe they couldn't have stopped it, but it really didn't help, because silence is not neutral, is it? Not in this setting. It by default chooses harm, as far as I'm concerned. Silence is not neutral, it sides with harm. And we have lots of axioms that talk about passivity in the face of wrongdoing and evil only strengthens it, sides with it. So let's talk about some ways how we can help. All right. Now I will say this before we get into these. Do not go above your level of comfort here. Do not, step into something that is just where you're way in over your head.
Beyond your skill set.
Yes, because at the end of the day, you could just call 911, or you can just go get somebody who can step in and do something. So let's talk about some ways to help. First, speaking up.
I think speaking up is one of the best things we can do to at least mitigate damage if it's being done. If you miss that opportunity, at least you can step in and be an ear for this person and validate their feelings.
Because like I said, silence strengthens these things. Even saying something like, hey, knock it off. That's not okay. What are you doing? It begins the process of making them hear you, making them maybe pause for a second. Because sometimes, especially like let's say for the victim, when they hear somebody raise a voice on their behalf, it pierces that bubble of isolation that's starting to grow.
Yep.
Right?
Kind of like I was talking about earlier with that 45-minute period.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what happens. People start getting in their feelings. They start to shut down. And if you can interrupt that and be involved and help them ground them back in reality, it makes such a difference.
We can support the target of bullying if we're there. If we see them, if we're online with them, if we're whatever, we can stand beside them. We can look them in the eye, literally or figuratively, if we're online with them, and say, use their name, right? Restore that dignity, restore that understanding that they are worth somebody. I'm calling you by name. I am affirming your worth here. And because a lot of times what happens, people that are bullied become invisible, like we've said. And when you show them that they're not invisible, that you can see them, I see you. Michael, I see you. Michael, you don't have to take this crap. Michael, whatever. I am reaffirming that you are a person and that you are deserving of dignity and respect, because I am calling you and I am showing up for you and I'm standing with you. You restore that connection where over time that shame is going to sever it. And again, isolation, and they become invisible. Reporting it, like I said before. If that's the most you can do, that's still an important thing, because especially when someone's safety is at risk, if they're going to be harmed, it's not betrayal. Some people say, oh, what do they say? Snitches get stitches. Bull crap.
Yeah, right.
Shut up with that. That's you taking responsibility. If someone's going to be hurt and you decide to do nothing, you're going to just mind your own business, then you're complicit in that. You might as well have done it yourself, as far as I'm concerned. It's not betrayal, it's responsibility. And if you get there in time, and if you do it in time, and if you get help there in time, that action interrupts what's happening, obviously. And it could stop it before it escalates beyond just words or pushing and shoving or whatever the case may be. So, and really what this is saying to this person is, hey, your life is important to me. I'm not going to ignore what's happening. I'm not going to mind my own business. This requires a lot of courage. I get it. But every time a bystander chooses courage over silence, they become a peacekeeper and no longer just a bystander. And they can, and this is where true justice takes place. So the bystander has more power than they realize, because each moment of minding your own business or being quiet or ignoring things, it either sustains darkness or it breaks it if you stand up. And I realize it takes a lot of courage. It does. But this is justice. Courage, true justice requires courage, but it also requires mercy. So, it takes courage to step into that line of fire sometimes, to be the one that disrupts that power, that false power, really. And it takes that courage to transform this moment of darkness into a moment of light. So, and justice, what is justice to us? Fairness in action, right? It restores that balance when power is misused and dignity is stripped away. And if you're a bystander that is committed to justice, and that's like saying, I will not allow this to become normal. I will stand until dignity or until peace is restored here. And these two things come together. And, now you are the peacekeeper. And really all it takes is to have the courage to call somebody if you need to, or get somebody there if you need to, or if you're able and ready, then to step in.
Well, I think an important thing to bring up here is, meet yourself where you're at. If you are someone who is conflict avoiding, you shut down in conflict, don't go straight into jumping in the middle of the argument and trying to stop it. What little steps can you take to start cultivating the courage to get involved when these situations arise? If you struggle with conflict, maybe you want to make sure you come in at the end to say, "Hey, are you okay? I saw that wasn't okay." Build that muscle. Then work your way into getting involved. But meet yourself where you're at and start building the muscle of courage. Because the more you practice it, the more you invest in yourself and meeting yourself where you're at, the more you can grow and flourish in these areas.
Yeah. This is where the ethos fold into each other, right? Because each act of love and truth and integrity and connection honors that respect for all life. Because again, this is a battle for dignity and respect. And the bystander is never neutral. You cannot be neutral. You're either complicit with harm or you carry the light. And I would expect my luminary to be the carrier of light. I don't expect him to go in there like a Power Ranger and start beating up all the monsters. But all you got to do is, if that's all you can do, that is awesome. Instead of doing this, recording it for YouTube or whatever.
Oh God, I know, I can't stand that.
So let's talk real quickly about, and I know, guys, I'm sorry we're running late with this one, but this is an important topic. I really believe that we really shouldn't rush through this.
And he said in the beginning it'll be an hour. I knew this was going to be a good one.
Yeah,
I knew we were going to go into it.
Yeah, I know. We're currently at about an hour and 15 minutes or so. So, but let's keep rolling with it, right? Let's talk about how we help the bullied, the target. How do we help them heal? What are some ways we can do that?
Again, validate their feelings. There is nothing more powerful to help validate their reality and help bring them out of that darkness. Help them separate what is the bully and what is them. If that bully was telling him, you're a piece of crap, you'll never amount to anything. It's like, help affirm. It's like, he doesn't know anything about you. You make of your life what you want. You could pick up on the cues of what was sort of the message going on and help them reaffirm their own humanity and their own strength.
Right.
Because often those are the wounds that stick after that 45 minutes or whatever time frame it is. It's when they start to doubt their own selves and something they already felt competent in until this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It is valid. The first step is validation. Because too often times the victims hear things like, well, it's just kids being kids. Or one of my favorites, you're just too sensitive. You gotta toughen up. You're just being too sensitive. These deepen these wounds, right? Instead of siding with the thing that happened to them, side with them. Listen, what happened to you is real. It's not your fault. You deserve dignity, you deserve healing, whatever, however you want to say it. But to just side with the event, that's not helping at all. So the next thing we have to do, or one of the things we have to do, and hopefully this is something that we have started to build in our spheres of influence already, but like these circles of trust, right? These healing grounds, places where people can be authentic and be vulnerable and not be judged, or no cruelty is tolerated. Because healing requires a place away from this stuff that keeps opening these wounds or causing these wounds. And it doesn't matter if it's at home or at school or at work. We have to learn to create these circles of trust with people. Build our circles really well and very carefully and very wisely and mindfully, right? These circles of people where our dignity is upheld and cruelty is not tolerated. And a lot of us have these, and they come in different flavors and different, sometimes they seem like they're being mean to each other, but this is really how they're healing. I'm not going to judge any of that, but be around people that at least where, you're heard and your dignity remains intact, or they can help you rediscover that or remember that or refine that again, whatever. But it's definitely not a circle of silence. It's a place where we can talk to each other without, I can talk to you about anything without fear of you judging me or using
it against you.
Against me.
Well, it's like we did a whole episode on this, like pick your circle, but it's
right.
I've seen people who want connection, but they surround themselves with people that don't have their best interests at heart. And it doesn't mean pick people who are, what's the word I'm looking, sycophantic, but it means pick people who value you as much as you value them. That's one of the best ways to tell who the people in your life that matter are. Are they people? Yeah, are they gonna have your back in hard times, just like you have their back?
Family.
Yeah,
your covenant of people, your chosen family. Choose them wisely, because you need a place where you can where this authentic self-expression and this vulnerability can take place, where everybody loves each other, right? And your circle may not be big, but that's okay. That's okay. It really is. Healing thrives when we find ways to speak from our very centers, from our soul even. And it isn't just speaking with our words. Journaling and art and music and prayer and having those hard but trusted conversations. Those all become these channels for this stuff to be released. Healing happens when we release the poison, when we clean out the infection, right?
Yeah.
This is how we give people back their power. We help them remember the spark, that inherent greatness in them.
We have to. I mean, it's the people, it's those who did not have someone there that suffer the most, that carry the wounds the longest. And the more we can be the ones to show up and give that grace, that support, that validation, the more we can help them move from suffering into recovery, from repetitive cycles into a generative growth. It's like often this happens within toxic relationship dynamics, and that one voice of reason can be the thing that helps free them from the chains that bind them.
Yeah, almost like giving them permission to heal. Of course, nobody needs permission to heal, but sometimes they need to hear it. You can heal. It's all right. But healing requires patience. It's never an instant thing, right? And it's never instant where we can learn to trust people enough to express this stuff to. I don't have a problem expressing it to you and expressing it to you, the millions of people out there, but I probably wasn't, and I don't remember, it's been so long ago, but I don't remember whether or not I had trouble doing that. Of course, I probably did, right? That's kind of the natural thing. So
right,
it's like, think of it like this. You have this, what's one that gets me all the time? Like a necklace or something that's all knotted up, and it seems impossible to untie it and unknot it, right? You get it there. And sometimes I have to hand that over to Heather and say, can you please, I'm going to rip this thing in half. Can you please? And then she'll get it part of the way and I'll be like, all right, give it back. I'm ready to do it again. it takes patience, right? So it's
Yep.
like, slowly untying these knots, because you don't want to destroy the necklace or whatever it is that's all knotted up and stuff. But our hearts are like that too. Our hearts are all knotted up over time, and it takes patience, and it takes sometimes help. Here, here, help me with this for a minute. I'm done with it. I'm over it, right? So
Yeah. And I think so many people struggle with that. They keep everything so close, but there is no greater gift you can give anyone you care about than your vulnerability, than your truth, than your pain.
yeah, this honors the ethos of love and connection. We turn this personal healing journey into collective hope.
Ah,
So before we move on, this takes us back to our axiom of light: heal yourself by healing others. People who survive these things, they carry this wisdom forged in pain and fire and suffering, really. Once they heal from this, those scars are still there. The lessons are there, though, right? Their stories become lanterns for other people who are walking through the same dark, winding road. Once, you're a really good example of this, because you're so open, you're so honest, and you're so vulnerable that your wounds and your healing becomes testimony, right? Because you're living proof, and lots of you are living proof of this too, that what once was thought of as weakness, this suffering, this pain and stuff, it becomes strength. It becomes true strength and true power.
when it fosters resilience, and sadly, one of the things that I truly believe is suffering is the greatest catalyst for growth. And I'm not necessarily saying staying in a situation and suffering is going to cause you to expand like crazy, but it's taking these things that we go through or these things we witness and using it to build stronger character. Again,
Right.
like I said, meeting yourself where you're at and you see someone getting bullied. You can either jump in at the end, you can wait till there's a pause and then try to interject. Or if you're up for it, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah. Or if you're me, you say, hey, and everybody stops. And they all look like, what the hell was that?
Yep.
Sorry. That's what I do. Like right now, my dog came running in over to the door. Revan was like, oh God, something's
What
happening.
I do.
Dad's calling the trumpets down. So we got to meet people, the victims of this. We got to, if we really want to help them along, and if we know them well enough, sometimes we got to hand them off to somebody that knows them. Sometimes we have to encourage them to seek help, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. There's no taboo in that, because really in our heart of hearts, we just want to see people prosper, right? But we got to meet them. We got to meet them where they're at. And that means meeting them with truth and meeting them with respect and also compassion. We got to build these circles of trust, or help them build these circles of trust, or, be that circle of trust for them where they can sit vulnerably and work through this. As you like to say, sometimes it just means sitting in the mud with them. I love that expression, by the way. I love that because it's so true. And just, again, let them know. We see you. We know what you're going through. And just try to encourage them to express that as best they
Yeah.
can, in whatever
And
way
one
they can, in whatever the way they feel best. Whether that means journaling or writing you a letter, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Some people are better at texting, or they would feel more comfortable texting you. Well, however they want to communicate this stuff, that part isn't important as long as they're communicating it.
Yeah. One thing to be mindful of, especially with the whole concept of sitting in the mud in these situations, especially if you're there, you're validating someone's feelings, be mindful of trying to fix the situation, because in many circumstances people aren't looking for someone to fix them. If anything, that might make them withdraw more because they're already feeling defeated and small, and giving them solutions is not going to help them. So just sit in the mud, hear what they have to say, validate their feelings, be an ear, not a voice.
Right? Because we're not fixers. We're not fixers, not of people. We aim to be healers of people, right? Not fixers of people. Fixers of machines and fixers of whatever else, but not people. We can't fix people, because that tells us that people are broken, and they're not. They're just going through some crap right now, moment to moment. And it's not forever. It doesn't have to be. But we can't fix them. We can help them heal. Really, at the end of the day, they heal themselves. We just provide them the space to do so. And if that means sitting with them, or if that means protecting them, if that means leaving them because we may not be the right people to do things, handing them off, or encouraging them to seek help, whatever. We don't care about if it's us or not. We just want them to heal. We're healers of people, not fixers of people. So how do we address the bully? This is the tough one. This is where the challenge comes back. It's easy for us to be empathetic and compassionate and loving to the victim because they are the ones that were attacked in some way, shape, or form. And our sense of justice and fairness, we want to cocoon them, and it's easy for us to do that, right? But here's the challenge. We must address the bully with the same principles of light, with the same ethos, with the same axioms, with the same agreements. This is where it gets hard, isn't it?
Well, this is where you got to be assertive. This is where you got to call out the bad behavior, provide discipline if necessary, correct action. People don't like doing that stuff. Yeah, like you said, it's easy to say, oh man, that really sucked. You didn't deserve to go through that. But it's a whole nother to say, hey, you're stepping out of line right now.
But I love you
especially when you get that flashback.
But I love you just as much.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. That's hard to say. But I love you just as much because even for you, I must honor the ethos of love because I must be reminded and my actions and words must present that even those that are lost in darkness still carry the light within them. And I must honor the ethos of truth, that I have to call out what you're doing. I have to hold you accountable to what you're doing. And I need to be very clear in what I'm saying to you. This is wrong. But at the same time, we have to try to see the story behind the pain if we're the ones dealing with it, right? Because the truth is, as we said a few times already, this type of behavior is oftentimes a symptom of something deeper, something that happened away from you, something that happened maybe years ago. And these people are oftentimes victims of neglect and abuse, and really the same things they're doing to someone else. It's just they're stuck in this loop of this cycle of toxic behavior because it's happening around them in their homes or in their larger community, right? And this type of aggression, especially if it's like really just clear aggression, this is some kind of misguided attempt to reclaim control over themselves, over their lives, where this may be the only setting that they have some kind of control because they are the bigger person, literally, like physically, or they are the smarter person, or they're, whatever. And they use this dominance or this attempt at dominating to mask their insecurities. Now, recognizing this does not excuse their behaviors or their actions, but for us, it helps us reframe them, and it helps them reframe them if they're at a place. And of course, all this is conditional if they're in a place to hear it, right? Because that may take several attempts and several people to get involved with that. Again, this does not excuse their actions. It just reframes it. We're starting to change their story, one of illusion into one of truth. But if we only see the cruelty behind what they're doing, then we're going to miss the root cause of this, the point of what's happening.
Well, and that's how you know the corrosion's impacting you.
Yeah. Yeah. When you don't actually want justice, you just want vengeance. And we've all been there. I've been there. Because it's just easier. It's much easier just to snatch somebody up because now I'm bigger than they are and now I'm the bully. But it's really hard. But they must face the consequences of their actions. Period. No doubt. Because without accountability, then there is no real justice for anyone and no incentive for them to change. But that accountability is an act of truth. It shines a light on their behavior. And maybe no one's ever said anything to them, or maybe people have said something to them, but they didn't say it in a way where they were forced to be accountable. So, but it always has to be more than just punishment. It has to be more than punishment. It has to be correction. We have to correct, and come from the idea of, from a place of correcting as best we can, rather than just punishing them. Because, we have lots of evidence that just punishing people does nothing. It does very little. I shouldn't say it's always bad, but it does very little in the long run, right?
Again, respecting that human spark that's inside of each of us.
No one is beyond redemption. That which is corrupt takes time to reform. One of our most powerful axioms of light. This means that we must try and create that circle of trust for them too. If not us, then somebody that's qualified. Somebody that can help make that change, right? Because this really takes a lot of time and patience too, because you have to establish these really firm boundaries, but you also have to establish this support, which is hard to do because we never want to. We want to just be with the victim. We don't care. It's hard for us to care, right? About what the perpetrator's doing. But again, patience is required here because change for them doesn't happen overnight either. And for them, it may require more patience because there may be a lot of repeats, a lot of repeated corrections, a lot of repeated accountability and repeated guidance, right?
Yeah. All change requires time and effort, and it's never just a straight across process of a flip of a switch.
And look, I'm not so naive that every bully can change or will change. That's just not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. But the way of Ashla for our Luminari, these are the things that we try to do in order. Words and diplomacy first, always. We try to talk people out of harm, and we try to talk people from committing harm using clear, firm language and setting those boundaries right off the bat. You will not go any further here. Not while I'm standing here, type of thing. And those boundaries communicated directly, right? Next, if that doesn't work, then we go to those support systems, whether that be teachers or managers or just some kind of mediator to ensure that it's correction, not punishment. Because there are more than one people involved here, and not one person could carry this alone.
Now, I think it's really important to, get a gauge on the situation and do your best to try to mediate, but you'll know if you're going to be able to make progress here. But the important thing is, how do we prevent future action?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to stage these interventions, get the person counseling or mentoring or whatever that just tries to get them help at the root level. And this is usually where it goes beyond us, where we encourage them to go, or sometimes the authorities will hand them off to somebody literally to start this process. And of course, physical defense. We're not pacifists in that way. Sometimes physical defense is needed, but we always say as a last resort, especially if life is directly threatened or there's serious bodily injury or harm's going to happen. If you are capable, then either you fight back or you step in physically and defend somebody. If you can. Most of us are just going to call somebody, call the cops, call whoever, but sometimes physical intervention is necessary. I've stepped into a lot of fights, Michael, in my life that I didn't start, but you're damn sure I finished them.
Yeah, I believe it.
But protection isn't necessarily violence, although we use violence to protect sometimes. Because when all else fails, our main goal should be to protect life because of our respect for life. Anything you want to add to today's topic? I know it was a long one. I appreciate you hanging in there. You're probably starving to death.
Keeps about all this food, but
I appreciate.
I think it's worth talking over
too.
it. Yeah, I think this is such an important topic to have a good conversation over, especially one that covers so much, because there is so much nuance and there's so many different angles to look at when covering it. So I'm glad we went into as much depth as we did.
Yeah.
But I think we covered all the bases.
And I think we could have gotten much deeper, of course. We always say that, but really what we're trying to do is just plant these seeds, and I encourage everybody to look deeper into this, look deeper into your own life. Where are you in this process? Are you the bully? Are you the victim? Sometimes you're both. Are you the bystander who's just minding their own business? Or are you the bystander that becomes the peacekeeper, right? And the agreements that kind of tie us all together today is courage, because it requires courage to speak especially when it feels safer to be quiet and mind your own business, right? Justice, to restore that balance where cruelty is in charge at the moment, but also mercy, to offer redemption where these wounds are festering for all involved. Respect, of course, to honor every soul as sacred. Family, to remember that we're all bound together, whether we like it or not. The ethos of love, it compels us to see beyond the wounds and shine that light of truth to see and investigate and try to attack these things at their root. Truth, again, to drag these things out into the light like we're doing today. But I would encourage people to continue these conversations or to start these conversations wherever you are. Integrity calls us to align our inner convictions with our outer actions. Do what you say. Do what you believe. So the battle for dignity is fought across all places, all landscapes, right? Classrooms, workplaces, homes, and on the big, wide, World Wide Web. But most of all, it's fought within the human heart. Now, the question is, will we turn away? Or will we step forward, step up? Do we let cruelty just fester in silence? Or again, do we shine that light of love and truth on this darkness, on these shadows? Every act of courage, every word of respect, every moment of compassion becomes a spark that drives out the darkness. And together, when we do this, and when we do it faithfully, and we do it together, those sparks become a fire that no cruelty on earth can withstand for very long. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. Do not underestimate your voice. Do not underestimate your presence or the influence you have on people. You do have power and influence. Use it wisely. Use it responsibly. Will you be the one that breaks the cycle? You may save a life. You may save a life. I'd like to share a prayer with you before we go. Let us pray. Source of eternal light, I call upon you now. I affirm that every life is sacred. Every soul is worthy of dignity. Every heart is meant for peace. I release the shadows of cruelty, intimidation, and silence, for they hold no power where light abides. I affirm that I will use my influence with integrity and responsibility. I will walk in responsibility, showing respect to all, and standing in courage when others cannot. I affirm that when injustice rises, I will not remain silent. I will always seek justice, but love only mercy. I will be a voice for the vulnerable, a shield for the wounded, and a reminder that compassion is strength, not weakness. I affirm that those who are wounded by bullying will remember their worth. May they see that their light has not been diminished, but only hidden, waiting to be revealed. I affirm that those who harm may awaken to healing, for cruelty often masks unhealed pain. I affirm that we, as one family, may learn mercy, justice, and grace as the true way forward. Let my words, thoughts, and actions be impeccable, my heart be open, and my courage be steadfast. Where darkness seeks to dim the flame, let me be its keeper. Where darkness seeks to silence, let us answer with light. So it is, and so may it ever be.
So it is.
Our affirmations for the day. I honor the dignity of all people, and I choose respect in every word and action. I will not stay silent in the face of harm. My courage shines brighter than fear. I will use my influence with responsibility to protect, uplift, and heal. I believe no one is beyond redemption. With patience and mercy, even brokenness can be restored. I walk in the light of Ashla, and I choose compassion over cruelty, healing over harm, and truth over silence. Now, I didn't have separate journal exercise for today because the exercise is going to really be a lot of journaling. Of course it is. Of course it is. This exercise, we're going to call this Breaking the Cycle of Bullying. And this is a reflection that really requires you to decide where you're at, whether you're the bullied, the bully, or the bystanders. Okay? Step one, for those who've been bullied or who are being bullied, write about a time where you felt diminished, excluded, or harmed. How did it affect your sense of self-worth? What would you have wanted someone to say or do in that moment to stand with you? For the bystanders, who I hope become peacekeepers, by the way, write about a time where you witnessed bullying or cruelty. Did you act or did you remain silent? How did your choice affect the situation, and how did it affect you? Now, as a side note, this is something I encouraged my mother to do after that incident at her work the other day, because it was bothering her a lot. For those who have bullied others, even if it's unintentional, because I think we've all done it maybe unintentionally, one time or the other. Reflect on a time where you used words or actions that may have wounded another. Why did you act that way? What pain or fear was beneath it? What could you have done differently? Now, step two is identifying a next step. Choose one action that you can take this week to counter bullying and strengthen our resolve. For the victim, share your experience with someone safe or write one affirmation of your dignity to repeat daily. Affirm your dignity. Affirm that you're worth. Affirm that your life is worth respecting, no matter what anybody says. Because if they don't believe that, you tell them to come see me, and I'll square them away, or at least I'll stand with you. For the bystander, commit to speaking up, even if it's in small ways. When you see people going out of their way to be a bully. And for you bullies, whether you're a former or current bully, if you're still a bully, I should say, apologize where appropriate, seek amends, seek forgiveness, or make a new choice in how you use your influence. Step 3, we're going to anchor this with wisdom. Now, you can read this out loud. I'm just giving you a suggestion here. Probably more powerful if you create your own words, but I'm just going to get you started here. You could say something like, I choose respect, responsibility, and courage. I honor the dignity of every life, including my own. I will not allow silence to strengthen darkness. I stand in the light which shouts the truth. And step 4, if appropriate, totally up to you. If appropriate, and this is why, by the way, you need a good circle of trust. If appropriate, share these reflections with a trusted friend or somebody you respect or someone you trust. Could be anybody, a mentor, a family member, someone in the community that's squared away and is good people. The act of speaking it out loud breaks the secrecy, and it just reaffirms the strength of the commitment. So that's my exercise for you guys today. Michael, any thoughts or additions to the exercise today?
Just to add to it, AA, which doesn't matter if you're an alcoholic or not, the 12-step program is designed to help people conquer their lives and get in touch to overcome the obstacles that have happened in their past. And forgiveness, as well as making amends, is 2 different steps within that program. And it's because they're so important. If you want to forgive yourself, seek that amends. If you want to overcome the challenges you have from the things you've been through, speak up about them. Bring them to light. Quit hiding them in some dark corner for only you to see. People will understand. People will resonate with you. And they'll be able to validate that it wasn't fair what you went through. So just approach this with grace, but approach it with honesty. Find that circle, because you don't have to carry these burdens alone, regardless of the role you played in it.
That's right. That's right. We're not casting shame or casting accountability, right? Correction, not punishment. And so, just so you guys know, by the time this show hits, which will be on the 25th, Thursday, this coming Thursday, 25th of September, Michael and I will be recording a show with our friend Courtney, who was on here before, and that show is going to be about forgiveness. When you're listening to this one on Thursday, the following Tuesday will be kind of like a follow-up to this show. All right, so I really look forward to that as well. That'll hit on Tuesday the 30th. No, this will hit on Thursday the 2nd. I'm sorry. We have a show in between there. But so anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us. Michael, thank you as always. I appreciate your insight.
Always a pleasure.
These topics. You learn stuff from me and I learn stuff from you. And hopefully you guys learning from us. And by the way, you guys could teach us stuff too by leaving comments under these episodes. I would love to hear your insights on this stuff. Don't be afraid to share your thoughts with us, because really that kind of completes the circle, right? You got Michael, you got I, and then you got you. Or I should say Michael and me, sorry. And then we have you. That completes the circle. And we all can learn from each other, right? So anyways, we love you guys very much. Thank you so much for joining us. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.